I'm very excited. I have an absolutely fantastic panel for you tonight, and I'm going to get into our introduction, starting with a good friend of the dialogue who's been here on several occasions, especially when we talk about women and relationships. My good friend, filmmaker, and producer Michael Norville. His most recent project, which is why we have invited him here for tonight's conversation, is entitled Mind, Booty, and Soul, which is a riveting documentary that explores the normalization of female objectification in American culture, which has given rise to self-objectification. Michael conceived this unique perspective while analyzing his own reactions to watching and being mesmerized. You was mesmerized?
I was
Mesmerized
mesmerized
by
by
the
my own
movement
work.
of the woman's booty. The booty powerful.
It's very powerful.
The movie attempts to decode the aftermath of the media's depiction of black female sexuality from the perspective of those who consume these images, and then connects the overexposure to hypersexual imagery that leads to behavior of self-objectification. Please welcome to the dialogue my good friend Michael Norville.
Thank you for having me.
And so we are. I mean, and I know Tim is going to chime in when we get to this, but we are a lot of black women are self-objectifying. We can't blame Sarah Baartman or white people for that matter. We're doing it to ourselves, yes?
We are doing it to ourselves. It's interesting how just looking at our images over years and years and years, it just seems like that's being programmed to our subconscious where we have to act out those images. In fact, we don't feel like we really made it until we see ourselves implanted in the images that we're viewing every day. And so from about 2000 to 2006, the whole hip-hop and music video world, I mean, right now you look at the leading lady of hip-hop and you can say she's really a stripper. We don't really have a female voice, you know. I remember the days of Bahamadia and MC Light, you know, they had a real
So I'm assuming you're
strong
referring
voice.
to Nicki Minaj.
Nicki Minaj, Rihanna, you know, I mean, just I can go down the list. I'm trying to think of like what's a formidable role model.
Right.
So, you know, when women start to see that image of themselves and they start to have this illusion that it's powerful, they're going to fall right in line. And
Absolutely. And we see it with our young girls, which we're going to talk about
Very
today.
much so.
Glad to have you back. Thank you for joining on this conversation. First to the dialogue is Miss Giovana Garnett, who is president and CEO of Curve Cupcakes. Raised in San Diego, California, Gia is a beautiful mixture of Filipino, German, Brazilian, and Creole, French Creole. A former model, she is currently the lead baker and CEO of Curve Cupcakes here in Southern California, which specializes in baking traditional pastries, as well as creating delicious alcohol infused. You got to be getting people drunk off your treats. She has also recently started a YouTube channel called Sweet Treats with Gia. So make sure you check her out on YouTube. Now we have invited Gia here on today's show due to her experience of being objectified herself and criticized for her booty and her body type. And she's here to share her experience as being a former urban model. And she's also featured in Michael's docuseries, Mind, Booty, and Soul, addressing her own identification with Sarah Baartman and also being seen and treated, as she says, as some sort of fetish. So please welcome Miss Giovana Garnett to the dialogue. Welcome, lady.
Thank you.
So, and what was exciting about, you know, talking to you during our pre-interview is that you never even heard of Sarah Baartman. Someone had said to you that you have a body type like her.
Yes.
And how did you respond when someone presented you with that question?
I ran home to Google her.
You had no idea who she was?
No. I
Now,
was
this
like,
this is
"Who are you
as an
talking
adult
Yes.
woman.
Yeah.
You've never even heard of Sarah Baartman, but you were being compared to her
about?" I was.
and not knowing. So when you discovered who she was,
I just looked at the video and was like, oh my gosh, we have similar bodies. And I can't believe that if I was born at that time, I would have been put on display in some form, you know, the same way now, but, you know, then.
absolutely.
So it hit me in my heart, like, wow, people have been doing this to black women for a long
for
time.
a very long time. And we're going to get
Yeah.
more into your story and your experience later on the show. But thank you so much
Of
for joining
course,
us here.
definitely.
And last but not least, riding coattail is my good friend, filmmaker and producer. You've seen Tim on here several times. He is a passionate filmmaker who started his career as a fashion photographer in Los Angeles over 35 years ago. And he has worked with a diverse talent from beginners to entertainment icons, including Michael Jackson, Quincy Jones, and the Notorious B.I.G. You work with B.I.G.
Yeah.
In 2006, Tim became an independent filmmaker with his hard-hitting, humorous, blunt force style that addresses many high-conflict situations. And many of you know Tim from his breakout cult classic, Diary of a Tired Black Man. Are black men still tired?
Still tired.
They still
Haven't
tired?
rested yet.
Which is still reaching new viewers today. It's still being seen on TV? They're still playing it?
I haven't seen it on TV lately, but
Okay.
iTunes, Amazon.
Okay,
is
you
still
have to
findable.
check
Yeah.
out Diary
Walmart.
of a Tired Black Man Part 1, and he has since then written and produced Part 2, which means we still tired, which means they still tired.
Still tired.
And-
I'm gonna show how to fix it in number 3.
You're going to try to fix it. Please
show how to
give us
fix
a
it.
solution. Please give brothers a
I'm
solution.
gonna wear y'all out even worse with 2, and then 3 it's gonna be called Solutions.
Excellent. And you've also did A Mother's Love with Rolanda Watts. But over the years, Tim has come to realize the major impact is the lack of fathers in children's lives, and this has motivated him to make relevant message films like the one you just discussed on Solutions, as well as speaking publicly to both youth and adults from Stanford, USC, UCLA, my alma mater, inner city youth programs, high schools, and youth prisons. His message is the importance of fathers. So please welcome Tim Alexander to the dialogue. So I'm going to start with you, Tim. When did you first hear about Sarkee Sarah Baartman?
I heard about Sarah Baartman. I'd say it was probably around 4 years ago.
Okay. And you're in your 50s.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you don't mind me saying that?
No, not at all. I'm 56.
And you just heard about Sarah. And I know prior to Sarah, you had clearly been doing a lot of work around black women and being single. So when you heard her story and you read up on it, how did that impact you? What did you think?
It didn't.
Okay.
And the reason it didn't is because it's such a complex issue. It's hard to know which side to look at it from.
Okay.
Did she do it to herself or did they do it to her?
Okay.
I also, and I hate to seem like, I'm working against the topic, but I'm a little bit disconnected from connecting Sarah Baartman to slavery because she
Okay.
wasn't a slave. She chose to go there to seek her fame. If you go to some place where everybody's white and has no booty at all, and you walk in with a big, and that different at that particular time, and there was not slavery in Paris at the time,
Okay.
nor England, you're going to be seen as quite a bit of an oddity. Now, she willingly allowed herself to play that caricature until it caught on. Had she just gone on about her business and wore normal clothes and worked as a servant or whatever job she could find, it probably wouldn't have happened.
So you may not be able to connect it to slavery, but you can't connect it to racism.
Racism, I think curiosity, because they actually went to court and tried to fight for her, and she said, no, I'm doing this myself.
Okay.
So she
All right,
kind of
all
opened
right.
the door and jumped right in and got what she got.
Okay. So when you first heard about it, first of all, what do you think of Tim's
Well, I mean, but
perspective?
I hear and I agree with them 1,000%. But one way we can kind of identify her mindset is look at today. Many women are volunteering themselves and they're convincing themselves that it's okay, and they're getting all this encouragement through the outside forces, and and they are constantly putting themselves in the same similar positions as Sarah is. So,
good.
and they're thinking the same thing. Well, maybe I can get famous. Maybe I can get rich. It's just like the fast food, quick solution to whatever,
But is
indication.
that racism?
But even in the movie, she did say, or it is inferred that part of her reason for wanting to do was to make money and to send back to her family in South Africa. So we see that even today with black
Yes.
women having to take certain opportunities to be able to take care of family.
And Latin women do that.
Okay, but we ain't talking about Latin women. We
Oh,
talking about
okay,
black
okay,
women.
all
Okay. But
you're going to make it racist.
But where
But she
I
didn't
think-
have the power. Do you know what I mean? Racism is also about power. Do you know what I'm saying? So she didn't have, it was the 1800s. I mean, really, how much power did, and she was from South Africa. So that's pretty much what I'm equating.
But we
it
have to look at the fact. I'm sorry, but we have to look at the fact that they had indentured servants in Europe.
Okay.
White people didn't have the power unless you were those handful of elite.
All right.
It was a class system.
I know I got a caller out there who got something to say to Tim. Why don't you give us a call here? But in terms of your introduction into her story, when did you first hear about it?
I heard about it in the early 2000s.
Okay.
I was doing Mind, Booty, and Soul, and of course, almost immediately somebody said, "Hey, have you heard about Sarah Baartman, Venus Hottentot?" I was like, "What? Never heard of her."
Okay.
So I immediately researched her, and I start seeing like this association to, white civilization and how they view the body and how they view the booty. I mean, at the time, we're in the early 2000s, this stereotype that a woman is skinny, wafy, and has big breasts as the ideal symbol of beauty was being thrown in our face constantly. And so a lot of black men at the time were just reacting like, hey, I want to see a real woman. I want to see a woman that doesn't look like a boy.
Okay.
So it was that immediate reaction. But then when you start looking in the past and you start seeing how a white man reacted, and some of these pictures, like, they're looking like, oh my God, they're examining what we
Absolutely.
do today. They're having this kind of like adrenaline rush reaction, like, yeah, so to speak. And I'm like, well, wow, they always did like booty and they did like ass. It's just like what we've been seeing as far as this ideal body type being skinny is an illusion. So
And and what is also important to know, what we don't often talk about is, our life prior to the Middle Passage when we were in Africa. And when I had spoke to, our historian, Kweku, or earlier this week, he had said, black women walked around naked all the time. It was like wearing, clothing. So
Yes.
men weren't sexually stimulated in Africa. Black African men weren't sexually stimulated because their women were walking around naked. So, when you're right. So when white men see them, it is shocking to them. It's not familiar to them. And they made a spectacle out of her. Once you educated yourself, did you talk to other women about her?
I did.
How did they respond?
Well, my girlfriends wanted to see the YouTube movie.
Okay.
As soon as we started talking about her, we wanted to just have a open dialogue like we are today about just because most of my friends are models,
Okay.
how we felt about it. And after watching it, I felt like the story being told, we don't know if it's 100% true.
Okay.
Do we know that she spoke the language when she did go to court? Was she able to understand everything everyone was saying?
Right.
How was she compensated?
It is from a French perspective.
Exactly.
So there is, interpretation in terms of how they are depicting her story. So good point, yes.
And the thing that bothered me most was that she was still on display when she died.
Yeah.
Because
160 years.
exactly.
Who puts a vagina on display for 160 years?
Well, and then a black vagina.
Absolutely.
Because we can't go anywhere in the world and see any other ethnicity in a museum, full body parts, the brain, everything on display.
And cast.
Like an animal.
Like an animal. What is it about the booty?
Before I get to the booty, racism or admiration? Yeah, there's two ways to look at that. See, everything is perspective.
In that movie, she was not being admired.
No, she wasn't.
She was being touched. She was being
No, she
fondled.
was
They
being-
were touching her vagina. They were touching her butt. That's not admiration.
And even in the movie, she said, like, I don't like this anymore. And she would intoxicate herself to get through it. Now, we don't know what parts of this story is true. But if that were the case, I mean, that's like the strippers
And
today.
even when she went through the prostitution phase, she showed signs of some venereal, some syphilis, and they still put her
Yes.
out there.
Now, I'm not going to say that it wasn't a rough ride. Yes, she definitely went through a lot.
Okay.
But she was an oddity.
To
And
them.
An oddity, right, to them. And they didn't know how to. This was a first time experience. I used to take models to Europe, and I took some girls to Italy, and they just wanted to touch their hair. They had never seen a black girl.
Okay.
And her body was so extremely different from anything they could have even conceived. It would be really hard. It's almost like an alien came down. You want to touch it and prod it and poke it.
Okay.
It's like, well, and every time there's a sci-fi movie, what do the aliens do? They stick a probe up our butt.
All right.
You know?
So like Michael admitted that he was mesmerized by the booty. How long you been mesmerized by the booty? Since you were a little boy?
Yeah, and I admitted to myself in the early 2000s, I made a video and I was editing it and I was just watching it over and over. And this is after I played it over and over, editing it. So I was just, in a state of suspense.
Okay.
And timeless.
Okay.
And I thought that was unusual.
Okay.
And I wanted to ask other people.
Okay. So for you a booty man?
I can appreciate a nice butt, but I can also appreciate. I'm kind of ambidextrous.
Okay.
The first thing I look at is a woman's legs,
All right.
and followed, believe it or not, by her arms. I like nice, muscular, toned arms. Everything between her neck and her upper thighs, I'm a little bit ambivalent.
Okay.
Yeah.
So from the
Wow.
conversations that you have with men, what is it? Really, what is it about the butt? I mean, women have now become, obsessed with it in and of itself. But what is it specifically about a black woman's posterior?
The exclusivity that black women had on having the best butts on earth
Okay.
is starting to wane. I have seen non-black women that had butts that can shut down any black woman I've ever met. They're
How do you
coming
know
out-
it's not
they-
fake?
They're coming
Oh,
up.
it is
how-
fake.
It is fake.
Yeah, but the visual aspect, and unless you want to go and start sticking pins in it and see if it oozes, the visual aspect of it is now it's no longer, and also the steroids in the food.
I was gonna say
Yeah, the
there is
steroids in the food.
something.
It makes chicken breast bigger,
I
makes
was just
butts
like, why
bigger.
they didn't put them hormones in my food?
Yeah. But now
Yeah,
they were
but 1970s, baby.
They were born eating steroid-enhanced food. I
Okay.
do not believe that all these big booty women all went and got butt implants.
All
No,
right.
they're actually growing big butts. So we are trying to connect Sarah Baartman to racism and objectification of black women today.
She's just an example. I'm not saying she
Okay.
led to it, but she was the first, as the woman had stated, she was
prototype.
considered the prototype, the first to be considered a video vixen, quote
And-
unquote.
okay, so just for sake of conversation, I'm going to show you a few disconnects
All right.
that make that a very flawed concept.
Okay.
First of all, she was in France and England in the 1800s. We had no internet, no TV. We're just now finding out about her about 4 years ago because they made a movie that we weren't aware of. So how in the world
Many of
that-
us. He found out in 2000.
Okay,
And
2000
6 years
still.
ago for me.
Okay, 6 years ago.
Okay. That's still relatively when you
No.
consider this
There's
was
some people still don't know about
So-
Black Wall Street.
so-
There's a whole lot of our story
I
that we
got
have not
it.
passed
But
down.
if they didn't know about it, then that couldn't have contributed to the sexual objectification. Now, if you talk about Sarah Baartman, she wasn't a model for today's sexual objectification because we didn't even know about her.
Yeah, but you're looking
And
at
it's
the
a different
blueprint
culture.
from you're taking
She's
it
the
from
blueprint.
you're taking it from the standpoint of the model. Let's take it from the enforcer, the oppressor, who really knows the story, who has the formula, who wants to dictate that same type of mental disease. They know the story, and they're the ones who are kind of controlling how black women are viewing themselves.
You really think they knew the story?
I-
Oh yeah,
You've seen it
without
in
a
the
doubt.
movies from Hollywood.
You know why I know? Because the formula seems really consistent. If you look at a lot of stuff on media, they keep dictating the same formula over and over. So, go ahead. In my opinion, just the images over and over, was conclusive that they wanted black women to view themselves as nothing but a body
Absolutely.
part.
I
Absolutely.
think they had a few 100,000 black women here they bought over from Africa directly. They had plenty of big butts right here. They didn't. It's not connected to Sarah Baartman. We had butts that were shipped over on boats.
But her story, but she
directly
was
here.
Sarah Baartman was the first to be in a museum for 160
Yes.
years
And
Yeah.
put on
and
display.
put on display.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that was a very different culture because they didn't have as many black women.
Wait, she just got buried in 2012. 2002.
Two.
Her
became a
remains.
She became a French cultural icon. She was like the Eiffel Tower, the Arc de Triomphe, and
Anyway.
Sarah Baartman's vagina.
Anyway,
Yeah, but should that be in the same, realm? You
It
mentioned
shouldn't have been, but it
You
was.
mentioned it's an idol. They were idolizing her, and that's
They were
great.
idolizing her.
But I think it was a distorted.
absolutely.
It was
Yes, it
absolutely. It was definitely distorted.
Absolutely.
But her butt to them was distorted.
Okay, real quick. Why do you think many of us, I mean, you just found out about it 4 years ago. I'm probably in that same, I'm a UCLA graduate. I just, myself just recently found out about her within the past 4 or 5 years. Why do you think, along with slavery, that we haven't passed down stories about Sarah Baartman?
But we think we made it. We don't want to feel that pain. We don't feel that discomfort. We don't want to remind ourselves of where we've been because we think we're beyond that.
Okay.
And it works to the advantage of the people who are oppressing us because if we don't know our story, if we don't know our history, then they can repeat the same formula over and over again, and they'll just do it to a new generation.
Absolutely.
But that wasn't our story.
Okay, absolutely.
My feeling about her is that they associated her as a monkey. It was their way of saying where we've came from. I don't care what anyone else says about it. I really feel that they put her on display because she was something close to what they thought the next person would be as they evolved from the monkey and ape, person.
Fair enough. We're talking about Sarah Baartman and the objectification of black women here on The Dialogue. Make sure you give us a call. Somebody got to talk to Tim, 323-473-30.